But I want you to see something that might change your entire perception of the anger of God forever, and you'll be a better person for it. Because I want you to see how a Jew viewed this verse. Okay? Because if you can see how a Jew viewed this, because this was written by a Jew to Jews to be sang in Jewish synagogues. It wasn't written to Gentiles, to be read by Gentiles, to be sang in Gentile churches. And how a Jew would have viewed the anger of God might be a little bit different than how we view the anger of God. Look at the word anger in the Hebrew. It's the Hebrew word af, A-P-H. There's a little tick, little apostrophe mark. That's the jot and the tittle that Jesus refers to. The little dash, A-P-H, anger. Now, notice that I didn't give you a definition. Because if I gave you a definition, it would give it away. Because I want you to see that the definition of God's anger is a little bit different than what you would think it is through Webster's or whatever, collegiate dictionary that you might go look up or whatever. That God's anger was perceived a bit different. Let's do it this way. This is the way this is how I study. The law first mentioned. Find out how it was used first. It might set an establishment for how it's going to be used later. Let me show you the first usage of the Hebrew word af, A-P-H, in the entire Bible. Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Wait a minute, there is not one phrase in that verse. Surely we put the wrong verse on the screen, because there's nowhere in there that the word af, A-P-H, anger, can possibly show up and mean what it means to us. Is there? The Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read it to you in the English, and when I get to the Hebrew word, I'll just say that word in Hebrew. All right? And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his af the breath of life. Man became a living being. Interesting. The very first usage of the Hebrew word af is nostril. So I read that and thought, well, that's odd. Maybe that was just a mistranslation. Maybe it wasn't really the word af. Let's go find it again. So what we do? Let's go to the second time it's ever used. See if anything changes. Next screen. Genesis chapter 3, one chapter later, verse 19. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Again, I go, wait a minute. There's nowhere in this text that the word af should appear. Nobody's mad. So let me read it to you in the English and drop in the Hebrew word. All right? In the sweat of your af you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. Face. First translation, nostril. Second translation, face. Let's get the next one. Genesis 27:45. Until your brother's anger turn away from you and he forgets what you've done to him, then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereaved also of you both in one day? Now this one we can run with, because I don't know if you caught it, but the fourth word of the verse is the English word anger, and you guessed it, that's the Hebrew word af. Now why would God use nostril and face and anger in the same definition? Because what God is showing you and me is that the very image of God, the face, the nostril, that flared nostrils that we always call anger, could not look upon man under an old covenant. Remember, under the old covenant, God told Moses, no man can look at my face and live. Why? My anger is temporary, Moses, but the image that you'll have of me under this old covenant is an image of anger. I won't look you in the eye under that image. And then came Jesus, who made it a practice of looking people in the eye. Why? Because Jesus was the epitome of favor for life. While everything you'd ever seen before was The angry face of God. Jesus came to turn your face onto a favor that lasts a lifetime. Why? Because at the cross, God's anger was going to be exhausted against that perceived separation. Can you see that when a Jew read that, he saw the face of God? The nostrils flared. The face of God. Temporarily, I can't look upon you, so that I can permanently bless you with favor. So the cross comes. Isaiah 53 is the prophecy of the cross. Jesus dies on Calvary. Although if you go back and read the 53rd chapter of Isaiah, you'll never see the word Jesus and you'll never see the word cross. But in the 53rd chapter of Isaiah, we've got somebody getting wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace is upon him. You've got this man dying as a transgressor, dying amongst thieves, dying his generation being cut off from the earth. You and I know that it's the cross, and I wrote a whole chapter about this in my book because the early church fathers connected the dots and pulled us back to Isaiah 53 and let us know that our sacrificial death was happening right there. Which is fascinating because the 54th chapter of Isaiah, right after the cross, is where we get this. Give me the next screen. Go ahead. Yeah, go on. Isaiah 54:9. For this is like the waters of Noah to me. For as I have sworn that the waters of Noah would no longer cover the earth, so I have sworn that I will not be angry with you, nor will I rebuke you. What is this is like the waters of Noah? This is the events that have just transpired, if you was to read the context. The events that just transpired is somebody was wounded for your transgressions and bruised for your iniquities, and the chastisement of your peace was upon him, and by his stripes you are healed. That someone was Jesus. That someone who was cut off from the earth, whose generations were cut off. That someone who was numbered amongst the transgressors. He was killed between two thieves. That someone has caused you to realize that just like the waters of Noah appeased God, so now the cross appeases God, and God made you a promise. I want everybody to look at this verse. I swear that I will not be angry with you. Did you see that? Now we behold the Father in the face of Jesus with no fear that his nostrils are flared. His anger was real, but it was for a moment so that his favor could last forever.